Any questions?
Eric, growing up as a young boy, loving the game of football, did you ever even dream that you were gonna be in the consideration for the Hall of Fame?
No, not at all, man, not at all. Obviously, we all kind of grew up in an environment that's a little bit different, right? I'm from San Diego, and we had Marcus Allen was our guy, no matter what team. He was at Lincoln High School, and everybody wanted to go to Lincoln High School and play because Marcus, right? And so I fell in love with the game, fell in love with the Raiders early on. You know, I was like the lone kid on the block who was a Raider fan, so I used to rock my Cliff Branch jersey and Fred Blitnikoff and all those guys. And I always thought I was gonna play baseball because we were a baseball city. Just loved playing football because of the locker room and, you know, what you go through preseason, even in, you know, Pop Warner, things like that. And never thought for a day that I would be in this position. Even in high school, I didn't think I was gonna, you know, play college football yet. I thought I was gonna go to Arizona State and play baseball. But Willie Shaw, who's a great friend of mine, recruited me to go to Arizona State. Really kind of opened my eyes a little bit and said, hey man, you're coming to Arizona State, scholarship for football. And I told, they told me I can walk on to the baseball team. And the first day I walked out there, Barry Bonds was in left field. Odin McDowell was the player of the year, was in center. A guy named Mike Devereaux was in right field. Those guys were all first players picked in the draft. And Coach Brock, a legendary coach, told me to keep the hat and go back to spring football. So that was kind of the beginning of just like dedicating, you know, my life to being the best football player I could be.
Eric, you've been in this position before. You know, I know it's not you to pat yourself on the back or shoot your own horn, but you know, you look at other cornerbacks that are in the Hall of Fame, and you're right there with them, if not, you know, have better stats.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of balance that line between you deserve it and also being respectful of the process?
I'd be honest, man, it's been frustrating, you know, the last couple of years. And I think you guys, and I'm not just speaking about you guys, but I think you guys who cover the game have opened a lot of like fans' eyes to the differences in being a DB or a cover corner and responsibilities of someone like Nate Hobbs who goes inside and is a much better player inside than outside. And so the nuances of the game. And then when you look at someone like myself, I played inside for a while. I played outside, I played left, I played right. And so I have a lot of respect for guys who are able to play at a very high level, but even more so for a guy who can play inside, play outside, wherever the best receiver is, that's your responsibility. So for years, you know, it was me and Michael Irvin, or me and Jerry Rice, or Andre Reed, who played inside. So I just think now there's a little more nuance into what I was able to do early on, and hopefully people understand that a little bit more and really separate myself from guys who just played outside or guys who went to safety at the end of their career. No disrespect to any of those guys who were able to do that, but to play 14 years on the corner is much different than playing 8 or 9 and then going to safety.
Do you get nervous in this process, or how are you feeling?
I feel much better this year than I have in previous years. I think last year was the first year I kind of was like, hold up, my numbers are this and I'm not in there. So it was more of an effort last year. And I think this year, along with, you know, the Raiders and everybody here on the staff, with the Eagles also, we're making more of an effort to kind of get that story out early. But yeah, I get nervous, and, you know, I still have a lot of respect for where I am right now and the rest of the guys on the list. You know, but hopefully this is the year.
So what would it mean for you? Yeah, I mean, the Pro Football Hall of Fame is the elite fraternity of the elite fraternity, which the league is already the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah. Obviously, it'd be a great honor, right? And it's a way to give shout outs to all those folks who were great along the way, who no one knows of. Like my older brother, Craig, is probably the biggest ambassador for me. And early on, you know, when I went to Arizona State, he was like, man, you can play in the league. And I was like, man, I'm just trying to get to the Rose Bowl, bro, you know. But he was probably my biggest supporter, and the work ethic and things like that. You know, he was a guy who wasn't great in school, and it was way before my time. You know, he was 8 years older than me, so he was almost like a father figure. So after games, you know, like if I would, you know, give up a pass or something like that, he would like, hey man, this is the time to go in and get that extra work in. So he really instilled in me about the work ethic and how you have to really do those things outside of practice in the games to really be a great performer. And so it's an opportunity, hopefully, to give respect to all those people who have my back since day one.
Yeah, it could be like a statistic or an accomplishment or a physical trait, but when you look throughout your career, what's something that you take the most pride in being able to accomplish that you feel speaks volumes to why you should be a Hall of Famer?
The consistency of taking the ball away. We can all be great and really good cover guys, but unless you take the ball away, you know, it really doesn't matter. You know, that's the point of, I think, being a cover guy is having the ability to take the ball away and give your offense another possession. And when you can do that from, you know, year one, I think I had 5 picks in year one, and in year 13, I think I had 5 or 6 picks and a couple touchdowns. So just the consistency of being able to take the ball away. And I think that was the trait that I always put the most emphasis on, is finding a way to you know, be that ball hawk.
What player or team was your favorite matchup, or maybe your most difficult matchup throughout your career?
Well, the 49ers at the time made me prepare more. So I think during the season, you always have your matchups, whether, you know, whoever it is, whoever the hot receiver is at that time. But the 49ers forced me to focus on them during off season. So after my first year, we were playing the 49ers, I think early in the season, and I had a young defensive back coach. He was even an assistant coach, and he came to our team, and he had a background in offense, in the West Coast offense. So that off season, I ran every route that Jerry Rice had ran the season before. All the formations. So whatever formation he ran those routes out of, I would have a mental picture of that formation and run that route. So when we got to the game, you know, I'd line up and look at the formation like, okay, it's first down. They need to get Jerry. You know, in the first 15 scripted plays, he has 6. He loves the slant route. You know, he's lined up on the outside edge of the numbers. I'm just going to take an inside leverage step here, even though we may be in cover 3. So those are things that I thought, and that made the game great, you know, because it really forced you as a player. You know, you're going to have that matchup. It's on television. We're in the magazines. You know, it's Jerry and EA. And so I took a lot of pride in that. So with Joe Montana and not many people talk about John Taylor, but John Taylor was an outstanding number 2 receiver, and just great. But those 2 guys really were the cream of the crop.
Who's a player or coach that you feel that you played alongside or against that really helped propel you within your career? I know you talked about Jerry Rice and,
Yeah.
you know, playing against him, but someone that you, I guess, played with or you were coached by that really helps you get to the next level.
Well, right from college, Willie Shaw, who recruited me to go to Arizona State, anytime we're in a game situation in practice, he would always sit back at the goal line. He would never critique you. And, you know, one practice I was like, Coach, you know, I kind of struggled through this practice, you know, what's up? And this is in college. He's like, hey, in the games, I'm not going to be there. You got to figure it out. So whenever there's a game situation, I'm not going to be there, so you can kind of look over. And that was early on. It was like my sophomore year in college. And so I kind of brought that to the league. So whenever there was a game situation in practice, you know, I was trying to get dialed in, right? And when I got to the pros, I think Mike Quick, who was a tremendous receiver at the time in the mid 80s, it was him and Jerry Rice. They were kind of like the cream of the crop. And he would just give Darryl Green the business. So I was all up in his ear like, man, how are you able to defeat, you know, Darryl Green like that? Because that was my comp coming out of college, because we were both, you know, under 6 foot, we're both fast guys. And I really learned a lot from Mike Quick. And defensively, of course, Buddy Ryan was just a genius, you know, and had to understand what he wanted from me as a player. And Roynell Young was the other corner. He was like the seasoned veteran. He had played like 8 years in the league, and he has his rookie. And not only did he help me on the football field, but he helped me during the course of off days, what you're supposed to be doing, how to be a pro, how to repair and study, take care of your body, ice tub, all those things. So some of the things off the field that I carried with me and was able to, years later, help a guy like Mark McMillan, Otis Smith, who eventually went to the Patriots. He started off with me in Philadelphia, so he went to the Patriots and had a lot of success. And of course, Charles Woodson, able to sit down and talk to Wood about off days and preparation, even though he didn't listen to me early on. You know, but those guys really helped me become a really good pro off the field.
Yeah, you mentioned PBUs are good, but obviously creating turnovers is better. But how did you particularly work on your hands to make sure you were able to make that play and then take it to the house?
Yeah, I really attribute that to being a baseball player, you know, and I was a left fielder, so, you know, trying to bring the ball back over the fence on home runs, making those kind of sliding catches. And then obviously in high school, you know, I was always a player too, so I was lined up in the slot. I took a lot of pride in catching the ball, and that was the one thing that you kept hearing was, hey man, cornerbacks are just receivers who can't catch. Well, I wanted to prove everybody wrong. Right? So just a lot of catching ball throws, whether it be a tennis ball or golf ball, small objects. Just really took a lot of pride in being able to catch the ball.
Eric, any corners playing the game today that remind you of yourself at all when you were playing, that you enjoy watching in particular?
Well, the guy we just saw is just phenomenal, Surtain. He's much longer than I am, but you just love the fact that he kind of anticipates, really does a good job of understanding route recognitions and plays, and those are the kind of guys that I really enjoy watching. Jack has a lot of that also, you know. Just need to see him be more consistent with that, with just the ability to recognize things by formations and then jump it. I was also a guy who I was a tackler too. I wasn't just a cover guy. I wanted to be involved in the run game, and that's why Bud Carson, who was a part of the Steelers later on, when he came over to Philadelphia, you know, we sat down one off season. He said, how do you feel about playing inside? And I was like, hey, let's do it. What do I have to do? He's like, well, you know, you gotta protect the edge at times and be a tackler. I was like, hey, no problem. So really took a lot of pride in that also, being a tackler. And I think when you're a corner, you can't be the kind of corner that folks are saying, hey, let's run at him to get him out of his game. So I like all corners who are able to play all facets of football.
You talked about your nose for takeaways. This Raiders team was last in the league in takeaways. What advice would you give to a young DB to get better at that part of this game?
Yeah, that's definitely a mindset. And not only a mindset, it's really about understanding route concepts. Because in the league, and even in high college brands, the reaction time, you're always going to be a second late. So it's a chance for you to kind of understand the route combinations and what's coming at you by film prep. So that's kind of what's happening now. We have young players who are in those situations, and they haven't been in those situations a lot. And so what we want to see, and I was just talking to Mike about this earlier, is our corners now give up some plays, but the most important thing we have to do, and what I try to do, is never make the same mistake twice. So if you have a team, and it's a copycat league, so if they're going to beat you with, you know, some pre-snap motion and kind of run their receiver through all of the mud and garbage, you have to find a way to figure out where the ball's going to be at the end of the play. And if it's your guy, you got to beat that guy to that position. So those are the things I would talk to these guys about. Just understanding the routes that have hurt you, and the other team sees those things, and they're going to employ that into their game plan coming up on the critical situation.
Yeah, do you allow yourself to get your hopes up, or do you just stay cautiously optimistic?
My hopes are up. Yeah, and that's the only way you should be, right? Because if not, for me, I there's just no doubt that I shouldn't be there. With just the numbers alone and the position I played, how difficult it is to maintain consistency throughout all those years. Whatever team I was on was better. So yeah, I'm optimistic and very hopeful.
Eric, your career was bookended by the Fog Bowl as a rookie, and your last game was the Tuck Rule game.
Yeah.
When in between there did you say, you know what, I belong here and I kind of deserve to be recognized for more than I do? It's a team game, but at the same time, you gotta look out for yourself.
Well, Paul, we must have talked before, because that's definitely what, every end of the season, there's some game that they mention that, either the Tuck Rule or the Fog or something. It's bad, worse. I would say when Reggie, who was just, the best football player I've ever been around, was Reggie White. Just incredible person on and off the field. And when he left our team in Philly in '92, and the next year, the numbers really didn't slip for me. And I was able to, all Madden and made another Pro Bowl. And, 2 or 3 years after that, I think I kind of knew, like '91, I was like really, I think, at the top of my game. But there was always, hey, defensive back, you guys don't have to cover as long because you guys have Reggie White. And, that was always something, hey, I didn't have any problem with that. But once Reggie left, and myself, and there was a couple other players who continued to play at a really high level, I think that's when you start to notice I have a shot. It was all about getting to 50 interceptions. That's kind of like the 500 home runs in baseball. So that was kind of like the goal for me after Reggie left was, hey, if I get to 50 interceptions, I should, at the end of my career, be able to put on that gold jacket.
So first guy you got was Vinny Testaverde. Last guy you got was Steve McNair. Who was your favorite quarterback to go against?
Man.
In terms of success, I guess.
Yeah. Probably Troy Aikman.
Yeah.
Probably Troy, because Buddy had drilled in the Cowboys hate to us, and whenever we'd play there, it was a big game. And being able to get Troy or any of the Cowboys were probably the best. Steve Young was another one. It was so efficient, and he got the ball out quick. So if you got Steve, that meant that you were really confident in your techniques and what you're reading. I remember later on in my career, I think I was with the Saints, he threw like a 18-yard outcut, like on 3rd and 15 to Terrell Owens, and I picked it off. And it was everything that came together. The film preparation came together, my skill set, being able to be in the right spot, having the confidence to break, on the ball that late, how fast he gets the ball out. So yes, all interceptions are kind of equal, but some of them are a bit different, when you're going against some of those, great offenses and receivers and quarterbacks.
Yeah, is getting the interception, is it more off of you getting the interception off the quarterback or the wide receiver? And what I mean by that is you play baseball, so it's like stealing a base.
Yeah.
You steal a base off a pitcher or you steal it off the catcher?
So what I would say to that, Q, is when you're breaking down an offense or a play, there's always a weak link in there somewhere by either the receiver and the routes that he's running. And if you have a guy like Mike or Jerry or Hall of Fame guy, well, that's not going to be the weakness. So maybe it's the quarterback, right? So maybe, the quarterback throws the ball late, or he doesn't have a great arm, so he's not going to throw the ball to the wide side of the field. If he's a strength, maybe it's the offensive coordinator. and maybe it's the game plan. So the game plan, if it's good, you're gonna stick with the things that work well. So as I'm studying film, and I'm in a situation where every time the offense is in this situation, this is what they like to do. So what I'm gonna do is take advantage of the success of the offense, because they're not gonna change because it's successful. So as I'm lining up, all those things are going off at once. So it's being able to process all the information in a couple seconds and then coming up with what you hope is the answer and being able to pick the ball off. So I go through every time, I have to go through all that process every single play. 60 plays, 70 plays, I have to figure out what's the weak link here. Is it the receiver, the quarterback, or the offensive system? And that's what was great about the chess match, right? So you never know, what that situation is going to present it. But once you get the ball, it's like everything slows down. As you're breaking to the ball, it's like in slow motion. You see the rotation of the ball. You're like, oh man, I'm about to get a pick, And then as soon as you catch it, bam, everything's 100 miles an hour again. Now it's like, let me get to the end zone, right? So, and that's one of the things that people talk about, hey, what do you miss? The locker room? No, I miss that right in the midst of all of this speed and preparation, it slows down and you're gonna get the pick. That's the thing that I miss most, on Sundays or Mondays or whatever.
The statistic for passes defense didn't become official until really later in your career. Really started being tracked kind of midway through.
Yeah.
Do you ever think about the fact that maybe you'd have one more metric there to point to? I'm sure you would add a lot.
Yeah. That's. I mean, like I said, the game has. Your group of people have really made it a lot easier to follow the game and track all those numbers. But yeah, some of the metrics and things like that really help corners nowadays and being successful would have definitely helped my argument a lot more. I think at one point, couple seasons, I was going every 4 times a quarterback threw the ball to my side, I would get an interception. So it was like, you would give away something early, so that's 1, all right, and then maybe a little slant here and cover 3, that's 2. You got 2 more, buddy, and the next time I'm gonna find a way to get the ball.
How much obviously you're still in the building as much as you are now, but just those seasons towards the end of your career you had with the Raiders, how much did those years mean to you in terms of having an exclamation point on your career?
Yeah, that's a great question, Levi. Because of the relationship that I had and with the Raiders and the fan base, making the decision to come to the Raiders, because I wasn't supposed to come here. And I'm pretty sure a lot of guys understand the story. I was not going to play in New Orleans again. I was like, I'm not coming back here. If I have to retire, I'm going to retire, but I'm not coming back here. We just had a disagreement and fallout with the organization. So I wanted to go to the 49ers so I could play the Saints twice a year and just like put it on them, right? And so I'm getting calls from everywhere. A lot of my ex-coaches who were at other places, Jeff Fisher and friends at the Vikings, everyone's calling me. And I'm like, no, I'm going to the 49ers. Again, Willie Shaw calls and he's like, hey, won't you come and take a trip to Oakland? And I'm like, I was with the Saints last year and we beat you guys. I'm like, I want to finish my last couple years like in meaningful football games. So he's like, just come out and meet everybody. So I fly out and I get to our facility over there in Oakland. It's man, compare this to that, just So I get to the facility and I walk in the door. Willie Brown picks me up at the airport. I walk into the facility and I'm talking to this young guy, shorter, and just we're kind of going back and forth. We're talking about Philadelphia Eagle days, whatever. So I'm talking with him, and I go up, meet with Coach Shaw, and after that meeting, I meet, of course, with Mr. Davis, and you know, we're going back and forth, and I didn't think I was gonna be here, so I'm kind of free to say whatever. And I'm like, hey, you know, Mr. Davis, why don't you draft me? And he's like, oh, you play a little bit safety your last year because guys got hurt. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I didn't like that. You know, he's like, I didn't like that. So I went with Terry McDaniel. I was like, oh, you made a mistake. So we're having a great time. And he says, hey, go talk to the head coach. And so I go to the head coach's office, and of course it's John Gruden, but it was the guy I spoke with at the beginning of when I walked in the building. So I didn't know that the head coach was that young, right? So I'm like, what the heck's going on? So me and he was like, hey, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna come here or not? And I was like, well, I'm not sure. I think I have another trip to take, you know, San Francisco, and I think I was supposed to take that the next week. So I fly home, and in our conversation with Coach Gruden, we talked about a lot of the players who I liked in New Orleans, and I mentioned Anthony Newman, who's a really good friend of mine. So I'm at home, and a couple days later, Anthony Newman calls me, and he's like, hey, what's going on, EA? What you up to? I'm like, oh, nothing much, man, kind of explaining the situation. And he's like, guess where I am? And I'm like, where are you at? He said, I'm in Oakland. I'm like, what are you doing in Oakland? He said, I'm about to sign. And I said, what? And he said, yeah, I'm about to sign with the Raiders, you know? And all those conversations I had with Coach Gruden, he said, this is the way to get you to come to Oakland, is to sign one of your best buddies. And Anthony was still a really good player, and it was a spot for him. So I, of course, you know, signed with the Raiders and was just ecstatic because they broke it all down to me. We're going to draft Charles Woodson. This kind of defense we're going to run. It's going to fit right with what you do. Be a great spot for you to be a leader for all these young guys. So those last, you know, 3.5 years were fantastic. You know, I couldn't have asked for anything more than, of course, you know, winning the Super Bowl, but being in those meaningful games, those great playoff games, the AFC Championship game against the Ravens, all those things. Greg Beaker, still one of my, you know, great friends. The organization was just phenomenal, and all the things you hear about and read about, once a Raider, always a Raider, it is exactly that. So it meant a lot, you know, to finish my career with the Raiders, and now that I'm back with them and kind of from the other side, it's still a fantastic organization, and just need to find a way to get more wins and get the Raiders where they need to be.
Eric,